Hey guys, so today we're going to be working on scenery. More in particular, we're going to be working on scatter-based scenery, or like tile scenery, so you can place things around on a board and have different layouts every single time you play. The theme is going to be a grassland, like a rocky grassland we got here. So we're going to be making pretty much this thing right here, and yeah, I'm going to show you how to make the base and the stones and painting it all up and getting that static grass on there. So I should also add that this is a two-part video, so we're not going to get to this point by the end of the video, but we will by the next one. So hopefully you can stick around and see where we end up. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so today we're going to be making these nice little rock formations that are great for a little scatter terrain. And you're really not locked down to any kind of scaling for this. You can see you can make these big bases, or you can make little tiny ones with just single rocks. And you can also make like nice little hill formations with the stone, what would you call that, like a cliff face. So you could make a large kind of cliff face stonage. Yeah, so this is what we're going to be working on. Pretty much there's a wide range of options that we can go through. It really does come down to what you want to do. Yeah, we are going to be working with static grass, so I'll run through the tools that we're going to be using. We're going to be using a Stanley knife or a scalpel, whichever one you have. I advise that you use something that's nice and sharp. And this is basically just to cut out things. We're going to be cutting outside like the base itself, and I'm going to be beveling the edges, so you got like a little bit of a nice smooth thing as opposed to like a straight edge. Yep. What else have we got? So the bases themselves are made out of this here board, and this is like a I'm not sure how to explain it. It's like paper on one side and paper on the other side and foam in between, and they usually use it for like art pieces. So you'd have this, and then you would have like a painting or like a drawing on top of that, and yeah, it's just used to keep the paper from bending, I suppose. But in this case we're going to be using it to cut out our shapes, so we can draw in a shape, we can cut it out, and that'll be our base. And this is really great stuff because it's really light and easy to use. You could use it for miniature basing as well if you wanted to, so you could just cut out circles and work with that. And I can't even show the entire thing on the screen here. I have cut this in half because I've used some of it to make some of this stuff over here. But you can see I just pretty much cut this out. Now I cut this out with scissors. You can use scissors, but I would advise you use a knife or something. Just because the scissors tend to damage the edging. You can see here it's got like a bit of bits that have ripped off. You can't really see that, but it's really jagged and not very smooth. Yeah, so we're going to be using that. You'll find it in an art shop for sure. So if you're not sure where to look for that, look in your local art supplier, and you'll definitely find that. This is just like paint water, so it looks like it's something, but that's just because I was washing a brush that had red paint on it. This is going to be pretty much just for our fingers. You can use gloves when we're working on this, but I like to use my fingers just because I can feel things properly. And we're going to be combining that pretty much with this, which is a filler. And you can get this from any like hardware place. I got it from Bunnings Warehouse, and it's just like a plaster, like a pre-mixed plaster, and it smells pretty bad but it's really amazing. And I don't think we'd be able to pull off some of the stuff we're going to do without this. So yeah, this is to dip our fingers in and smooth out the filler so it's not all rough and stuff. And yeah, we're going to put these two together because I don't think I'll need the water for anything else until we get to the painting. Now the other thing we're going to be using is obviously PVA, amazing PVA. And this will be much later on. This will be at the end phase when we're putting on the grass, which is right here. So this is static grass. And the static grass, I'm going to be using a static grass applicator or applier. And this is just a battery. This is like a cable, yeah. It doesn't plug into like any PowerPoint or anything. This is actually the opposite end, so I've got a little piece of copper. You could use just a little pin or something. Anyway, you put a pin on the tip of this, and then you can poke it into the PVA wherever you paint it, and you pretty much just use the static grass, and I won't do it now because there is static in the static grass. It is in there, but you tip it upside down and you turn it on, and it'll come out and it'll work. We'll go through it when we get to it. So the static grass applicator is pretty much, you can see, that's it working. So I'm pressing the on button and there's electricity coming out, and then it's off when it's off, and I turn it off. So when we get into that, I will be going into this a lot more in detail when we get to it. Alright, just making sure it's off. Alright, and the very last thing, the dirt, or the mud, whichever one you want to call it. This was the pre-mixed stuff that we made, and you can see this is what it looks like once it's already mixed. It's kind of separated, so you got the paint on that layer and the sand on the other layer. All you have to do is pretty much mix it together again. So you can see here, I've just cut a straight line through it. You can easily mix it, and it'll be as good as when you first mixed it. So yeah, just a nice little thorough mix, and it'll be good as new. You can see it looks like some chocolatey ice cream. There we go. All right, let's get into it. Now, first things first, we want to be using the foam board, which was here, and I'm going to just get a pencil to mark it out. 2 seconds. I've just got you just need pretty much a light pencil. A white would be good, or like white chalk or whatever. I'm just going to be using, this light teal kind of color, and you can pretty much draw on it. I don't know if you can see that, and it won't matter because you'll be putting stuff over the top of it. So we're going to be working on, we're going to be making a small little piece of terrain. This is just basically scatter terrain, so you can put it on the board and they can go anywhere you want, and yeah, your troops will be able to move around it. So yeah, we're going to make a small one. We don't need to reference anything. Pretty much just look at the models that you're working with, and pretty much just guesstimate what kind of size piece you want to work on. Because if you're working on a much smaller scale, this is 28mm, this would be huge. This would be a massive chunk of land. And if you're working in a larger scale for whatever reason, then this will be small. You know, you just got to work around it. So I'll cut out a little circle like this, and we'll make a large one as well. Just another for a rock formation that's pretty much like this. So this is going to be a larger piece of terrain. And yeah, just get into it. So we are going to end up with crap that we don't use. I'm sure you could save that for something else later on, but right now we're just going to be focusing on what we do want, which are these. I'm just cutting out 3 pieces. I'll cut out a smaller one just to show you that you could use it for one of your men if you really wanted to. I'll just trace this guy's base. So I've got an extra small one that's just sitting there like that. Alright, now we just got to get to cutting. So I'm using the Stanley knife, and make sure you don't cut yourself. I've got this so far away, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Let's see if I can get away with this. So because this stuff is, it's pretty, come on. You might have to do multiple cuts. I'm so used to using just scissors on this stuff that I might actually ditch this knife and use scissors, because this knife will be great for when I'm trying to bevel it, that's for sure. Let's see if I can use another knife. Maybe it was just the knife. Alright, I think it was just that knife. So yeah, make sure you got a good knife. I think that Stanley knife might be a bit blunt. Yep, that worked perfectly. Look at that. Alright, so I will be working on just this piece for now. So we'll come back and we'll cut the others. We just want to cut around here. I'm going to show you what happens when I do use the scissors. Because scissors do work with this. Because it's just paper and foam, you could save a lot of time, but if we zoom in on this, you might see that it kind of damages the paper. Alright, so one side's cut and the other side is sliced, and see if we can get this. So that's the sliced side and that's the cut side. You really can't tell much of a difference here. If anything, the sliced side looks a bit worse, but that was just because I used the that shitty Stanley knife just now. So I'll do it again, just real quick sticks. This is just the personal preference, really. If you enjoy using if you think you can do better with the knives, use knives for sure. But if you've got a really good set of scissors that cut through pretty much anything, then I advise you use the scissors. But here we go, this is a much better cut. So this cut was just with the knife then. You really can't tell too much of a difference. That's with the knife and that's with the scissors. You can see the scissors tend to squish it and deform it, whereas it's kind of perfect actually. And then the other side, which is just crap. So yeah, it comes down to your personal preference. I'm going to be using the knife just because I've used the scissors a bit too much and I'd like to experiment. Also, when you're cutting, make sure you got a nice board that you can cut on. I've got this hobby cutting board. It's a massive board, but you can get smaller ones like this one I've got over to the side, which you can't see. So you can get smaller ones that are really small, and you can cut on those, so you don't need the entire table's space worth. But there's a nice little thing right here. So when we cut out the other ones, I'll go through this one first, and the other ones will just be all done, and we'll cut straight to it. When we are done here, we want to bevel the edge, and this is going to have to need the knife. So if you've cut this part so far with the scissors, you're going to have to do the next part with a knife. So what we're going to do is basically get into it like this. So I'll just cut that little bit off. And this is just beveling the edges here. And you can see we're going to do this all the way around so it looks like it's got a bit of a lip. And I'll just quickly do that right now. And there you go, we got it out. So you can see here now that the edge is almost completely beveled. It's really nice. You got to make sure when you're cutting these you don't go too far, you don't have too much of an angle, because you can cut out a bit too much of an edge there. Excuse me. Now I know what you're thinking. I do a lot of 3D printing, and why wouldn't I just 3D print a base? Now I have actually got bases where I have 3D printed them. You can see here the base is nice and 3D printed, and it's really sturdy and it's not going to bend anytime soon. But this base took around 40 minutes to print, and it's really thin, you can see here. It's 40 minutes. I mean, if you want to get this done, this took around, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes so far. This took 40 minutes, and you can see the size here is quite different. So if you want to work on smaller size bases, sure, print them. You could print out a bunch while you sleep. But if you really want to just work on a project immediately, then I advise you work on it like this. Anyway, so that's an option for you. You can always 3D print bases, and yeah, let's go cut out the other bases right now. Alright. Okay, so we've got this these pieces all cut out here. Now I'm just going to bevel them. And here we go. Let's get into it. So with this one, I did kind of cut a little bit too far in, and you can see like it's left a bit of an edge here on the inside. But yeah, I made sure that I didn't lose the, like you can see here, this is a bit too much of a lip right there, whereas this is like thinner here. You don't want to you want to make sure that you don't have too much of an angle when you're cutting, otherwise you'll end up with a really flat edge, unless that's what you're going for. But in this case, I don't really want to have that, so I'm going to have to clean that up just by cutting a little bit around the edge. I might get a weird angle here. Oh, I might have to put it on the table. Here we go. Here we go. So clean out that edge, just like that. And then if there's any weird offcuts, you can just go around it like so, and remove any bits that you don't like. And that's it, I'm pretty happy with that. So that's the next base done. Moving on to the next one. So I should also add that there are alternatives for these kind of bases. We could use a wood, like an MDF or a plywood of some sort, and we could go with that, and we could just bevel the edges with power tools, and we could cut it out with a jigsaw and whatnot. But this is probably one of the easiest, accessible, and cleanest ways to work on such large bases. This is pretty much the mess that we're getting from here. Just these little weird offcuts. And that's it. And if you really wanted to be resourceful, I'm sure you could find something for these. You could put them in your garbage bag, maybe, or you could put them in like maybe another project if you wanted to have some sort of weird thing. I don't know. I've never actually tried to use these in a project, but hey, something out there. I'm sure someone could think of something. So we got this little base right here. I'm going to try and bevel that. I've never actually worked on this scale, but it's a good little attempt here. Let's try and bevel it. There we go. There's the smallest little scatter piece terrain base that I've ever made. I would just print these if I was going to be working on this size. That would take forever. That'd just be really finicky. With these, it feels like you're getting somewhere because they're so big. Yeah. So, I didn't add this into the what we need list. We're going to also need foam, little chunks of foam. This foam it's just this kind of foam. This is just the packing foam, and I've been ripping off bits of it. You can see here I've ripped off a whole bunch of bits, and we're just going to be doing exactly that. So, depending however you want to rip it off, I'm just going to snap off a piece like that. And that's it, and then we can grab off more pieces. This is pretty messy, this bit, but if you're smart about it, you can pull off bits without making too much of a mess. This is probably too loud to even hear me right now. So yeah. So there's not much mess, and I've got my foam pieces. Now these look like crap right now, but what we want to do is break them up so we have lots of little chunks like this. And these are going to become our stones later on. So you can imagine them being scattered around like this. Yeah, so just break up your stones, or your foam stones. And it doesn't really matter what they look like now, because they're not going to look like this in the end. If you do really want like a specifically shaped rock, then you could get into it and maybe carve away at some of it. It'd be a lot better with a hot knife, but you can carve this stuff if you're really gentle and you've got a sharp enough knife. So if you really absolutely wanted to get a nice shaped rock, you could go ham on these and get some really nice stuff. But right now, I just want some really basic rips. So, yep, let's get some more stones going. So I should add that I actually previously made some of these from the last projects that I worked on, and I ended up with a lot spare. So if you do end up with a bunch spare, don't throw them away. Put them in like a little container of some sort and use them for later. Anyway, let's get into it. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the way they're set up at the moment. What I'm going to do is just clean up underneath it. We're going to use the filler now. So we're turning to the filler, and this is probably a unconventional way of doing this, but I like to use the filler to stick them down. Now obviously this is a bit of a, like I said, unconventional way. Because you use the filler to stick them down, you're going to be using excess filler, and it's also going to be wet when you're working on this. So I advise you could potentially use like a PVA or like a hot glue to stick them down, and then you can work on them straight away and not really have to worry about it. But this is just the way I like to do it. Yeah, I'm a bit stubborn in that way, so if you want to do it the other ways, I advise you do that, and then you can stick the filler on top, you can skip ahead, but I'm going to be using this as pretty much a glue to begin with. So let's get into it. So technically that's done. You could leave it at that if you wanted to, but we are going to go back and apply some more filler on top. So first I'm just going to glue everything down with this, and then we'll move on to the sculpting phase over the top. Let's get into it. Alright, so we've got our little stone formations of where they're going to be going, and they're looking pretty good. You can see here. Now my little base has just gone missing. Where is he? Here we go. I'm really not sure if I could stick a stone on there. I will just be showing that as a, you could use this for your models if you really wanted to, and leave it at that. Now with the excess kind of stuff, we want to be we want to start wiping it onto these, and we want to get rid of that bubbly kind of look that the foam has and make it look a little bit more smooth. So when we chuck it on, we can just do this, and it really doesn't matter how rough it goes on. So all you want to be doing is getting that filler on the model. So we'll go around and do that. You can see how rough this is coming out. So, like I said, you could use gloves at this point, but I do like to do it with just fingers because you can really feel what you're touching, and you can tell if it's working or not, pretty much. Used a little bit too much. It's okay to use too much because you can just go back at it and remove it and move it around. So with the excess filler, we can just wipe that off on the lid and save it for later. Wipe as much as we can, as long as it's not too, like you haven't been working on it too long and it hasn't dried up. And then we can just chuck the lid on top of that. And now we're going to be using this water. Once you've got a clean hand to work with, or clean fingers, we're going to be using the water to help smooth this out. Now we want to make sure our fingers are pretty soaked, I reckon. And then we just want to pat on the bits that we want to flat out, and then wet our finger again. So we're pretty much flattening out bits that we don't want to be too spiky. And if you find that you've actually got bits that are not covered with the filler, you can push some filler around, or you can just leave it blank if you want to. Not all rocks are perfect, as long as there's not like some ridiculous obvious foam, you should be fine. Once you come to painting, it's going to be covered up. Yeah, so once there's a nice flat edge, you can go around. This is pretty much work with the foam that you've just completely random. Rocks are pretty damn usually random, so work with it, and it'll go to your benefit. So I haven't really planned out what this rock was going to look like. It's kind of just forming itself. So yeah, just work with the stone. Work with the foam. I already think that they're stones, so that's a good sign. So we just want to make sure that the edges are nice and clean, and yeah, we don't want any filler spikes because they will come out like really sharp. And so we just go around the edges and make sure they're nice and smooth. Or as smooth as you can get it, really. We're pretty much just going to take a good, if you're leaving this indoors, a good 20 hours a day, pretty much. If you were to take this outside on a nice sunny day, you could probably have them dry to work on to the next next part in maybe just a couple hours, yeah, depending on like how hot it was and how windy it was. It really does matter, and how thick you apply it as well. The thicker you apply it, the harder it is to actually let it dry. So it's pretty much always going to take a longer time for the parts that connect together, because that's where you've filled in spots, and that's where it likes to sit. So don't expect those bits to dry straight away. They might actually take a lot longer than you think. And yeah, so as you can see, they're all done now. So when we move on to part 2, don't just go and take these straight away and work straight on them, because you're going to basically ruin all the work that you've just put into these. So yeah, give them time to set. While they're sitting, work on a new batch so you can have an excess amount. Yeah, or maybe make some more dirt, make some mud paint. That's definitely what we're going to be using in the next video. So if you haven't already made some of this, you're more than welcome to check out the video. And yeah. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully part 2 comes soon as these things are dried, basically. And we can get these things onto the table and start playing some games. Now, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and maybe share it with a friend who you think might be interested in this kind of stuff. Maybe just for watching, or maybe they're interested in making something like this themselves. Also, if you want to support me even more so, you're more than welcome to head over onto Patreon and pledge a couple dollars per video. And this really helps me out, and also I'll be giving away exclusive models that are 3D printed, and they're basically models that I don't have on Thingiverse. So they'll be just for you and you alone. So you can head over there and pledge a couple dollars per video, and I've said that already. And thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you around the next video. See you guys.